Please welcome Kathleen Somerville, the New West Film Fest director, who will introduce our next speaker, MazdakGharibnavaz.
So I don't have a bio on him. Oh, but it's okay. I'm just going to say his name. Okay. So I just would like to introduce our special guest. I don't want to pronounce your name wrong. I'm sorry. MazdakGharibnavaz. And he's with Open Media, and I don't have your bio here, so just please come up and talk about technology.
All right. Thank you for that. Thanks for having me. My name is Mazdak. I'm from Open Media. Does anyone know? Has anyone heard about Open Media? A few people. Cool. So we are a nonprofit dedicated to working to keep the internet open, affordable, and surveillance-free. And I decided to keep things light by talking about government surveillance. So strap in and have some fun, because things are going to get a little bit heavy. Just as before I begin, I just want to say that most of this presentation is kind of based on Glenn Greenwald's book, No Place to Hide, that goes into all the revelations that came out of the NSA, the National Security Agency leaks, and all the quotes and all the slides that I'm about to show are top secret slides that were leaked, and so if you like to learn more, I would highly recommend this book. So who's heard of Edward Snowden? Most people. So Edward Snowden was a NSA contractor. He worked for Booz Allen Hamilton for doing basically intelligence work. He worked in NSA, CIA, many different places, and the things that he saw made him decide to leak a lot of documents. And from that leak, we basically gained a huge understanding on what is happening in the world through the use of internet. Many awesome things happen with the internet, many bad things happen with the internet, and it's kind of up to us to make sure that things don't turn out too badly. So when we talk about government collected data, generally it falls under two categories. Content, which is basically if you call someone or if you send an email, say, hi, how are you? That's the content, the message. There's also metadata. We heard about that in the movie. Metadata is basically data about data. It tells you who's calling who, what's the duration, where you're calling from, all the quantifiable number type of things. So because of that, you can tell that content is, because of its unstructured nature, it's harder to analyze, whereas metadata, it's very easy. Plug it in, you have all the numbers, plot everything, analyze everyone's lives. Metadata is basically like having a private detective follow you around. They stay back so that they can't hear what you're saying, but they see where you go all around town. They see who you're talking to, how long you're talking with them. So that also enables them to uncover additional facts that you wouldn't from content, right? When you're catching metadata, you're catching the data of the person that you're looking at and the persons that they're interacting. You're basically hitting everybody. Now let's talk about what types of data breaches there are. The NSA, which is the National Security Agency, they're the main intelligence of the United States, grabs data in 3 different ways. The first way is the direct intercontinental fiber optics cables. Now, basically with internet, there's huge cables that run under the oceans. They direct all the information between continents. And they've basically devised ways of grabbing data directly from those lines. They also cooperate with telecommunications and internet companies. They make agreements to put backdoors inside of major companies and grab data that way. And the third way is, I think it was discussed a little bit in the movie as well, which is malware injection. They send you a suspicious email with an attachment. You don't know. You click on it. Your computer now has something on it that basically directly feeds data to the NSA. And I should note that I'm going to be talking a lot about NSA and the United States, but this is really about all governments, right? The NSA relies heavily, for example, on the 5 Eyes. Canada, Great Britain, US, Australia, and New Zealand, right? Those are the big 5 guys that really work together a lot. So the first revelations that came out of the NSA leaks was actually about telephones. It was the FISA Court, which is basically a rubber stamp secret court that just says, similar to that, "Dear Verizon, please give us all the data on all of your customers, whether they're in the United States or outside of the United States. Thanks, bye." That was me translating it from legal speak. The FISA Court, it's also really interesting because if any intelligence agency within the United States, for example, wants to surveil Americans, they have to go to the FISA Court and get a rubber stamp, so it's just a process they go through. If you're not American, there's not anything. They can just do it. There's no mechanism. So that kind of sends a message to the world that Americans apparently are the only ones deserving of privacy. So boundless informant is a tool that the NSA has had for a long time, and they've gone in front of Congress and testified that they have no idea how much data they're getting. They can't estimate how much they're collecting. And actually, boundless informant is the tool that they created so that they know exactly that information, right? So if you look at that number on there, the 3,000,095,000, that's in one day combination between telephones and electronic surveillance for just one of the subsections of the NSA. The NSA has thousands of different agencies under it. And actually, towards the left, the 97 billion and 127, that's in 1 month of just this one agency. So you can see that there's quite a bit being gathered, and they know the exact amounts. Also, what's ironic is that those numbers are actually higher than the amount they collect from, for example, Russia or Mexico or EU. So they're collecting more from their own citizens. So I mentioned the fiber optic cables. These are the direct cables. That's the most direct way that you can grab data, and they do it by partnering with corporations, basically. AT&T, Microsoft, Verizon, Motorola, huge guys. They form cooperation agreements and basically get direct access from the main line. And that's the main way that they grab it from there. Leveraging unique key corporate partnerships to gain access to high-capacity international fiber optic optic cables, switches, and/or routers throughout the world. By the way, these are all internal NSA direct documents, so they had no problems just kind of spelling it out what it is amongst themselves. Prism, this is probably one of the most famous one out there, which is basically the internet companies, the big guys, Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Paltalk, I don't know, YouTube, Skype, Apple. They basically all kind of made an agreement with the NSA, and they said, we're going to give you a back door into all of the data that we collect, you can kind of do whatever. You don't have to contact us in any way. You don't have to present warrants. You can just kind of directly search our databases, and that's how that was. And yeah, you can collect all sorts of email, chat, video, photo, all sorts of different things, file transfers. What does your social network look like? What are you doing today? Which makes a picture like this a little bit more ominous than what it originally looked like. Basically, President Obama sitting with a lot of Silicon Valley people. Xkeyscore is according to the NSA itself, is the widest reaching tool that they have. This is basically essentially a Google toolbar where you just kind of search someone, whether by it's their phone number or email or something, and you basically get to see everything that they have in their social media, in their emails, within their chats. So it really streamlined the process for the NSA analysts, so that they don't have to work too hard, just directly to the source with a Google search. Actually, even real-time browsing. So. Yeah, what does looking at someone's social networks say about them? According to the 5 Eyes, communications, day-to-day activities, contacts on social networks, photographs, videos, personnel information, location and travel information. So your phones have geo-tracking so that they can collect that and kind of map out where you go during the day. And this one's just kind of I don't know after seeing all the numbers, but this one's the sticker shock of 42 billion in 1 month is kind of up there. And once you kind of communicate that stuff like this is okay, then at some point it kind of trickles down. So that the culture of surveillance is more accepted. And you have things like the local police using things like stingrays, IMSI catchers. These are basically things that trick your phone into thinking that your phone is connecting to a cell phone tower, but they're actually connecting to a guy's briefcase in a white van outside. And this isn't really targeted. This is, if it's in a neighborhood, within 5 kilometers, it kind of vacuums up everyone's data. And then the police can just say, okay, well, let's look at what we have here, right? If there's a protest going on, for example, and the police just kind of set this up, maybe they can disrupt people. And actually, the Vancouver Police Department was, I think, the first one a few weeks back that kind of admitted that they use this. So let's do a quick case study. So all the capabilities that I kind of described. Let's say I'm a NSA analyst, and I'm surveilling Kate. And Kate sends actually, Kate calls Dr. Smith's office to confirm their appointment. Okay, I have the metadata of that, Dr. Smith's office. I can go look up the information of Dr. Smith, who's an oncologist. So now I know that Kate is calling an oncologist for some reason. And then 2 hours later, she sends an email to a man, says, I'll see you tomorrow night after work, love you. And then I can go and look at the other person's email, and I see that that's not her husband. It's just someone else. Now, why am I surveilling Kate? Could be because I'm an ex-partner of Kate, and I just kind of want to see what she's up to. But that's not really far enough, because now that you know the other email, you can send, a virus in an email, a malware, that the other person opens. The malware now gives you access to turning on their webcam anytime you want. So when Kate's there, you can turn on the webcam, get incriminating evidence, and kind of ruin her life. You have that capability as a person sitting behind the desk. Does that actually happen? Kinda. Actually, I think the cache for activists and journalists is kind of my favorite there. So let's talk about the NSA itself. Like I said, there's kind of been a change of culture with surveillance. We've gone from a point where we said this is a necessary thing for security, and they're still trying to push that. But these leaks kind of showed us that this goes way beyond that. The motivations here are not security-driven. You can actually see that in NSA, they employ 30,000 public employees, but 60,000 private sector contractors. That means that they've created their own industry worth billions of dollars. So they have an incentive to make that industry keep growing because they're all kind of making money in that industry. 70% of NSA's budget is spent on private sector. They even boast about it, serving our customers. The customers being, for example, departments of Treasury and Commerce. So, departing from the national security narrative, you can clearly see that there's also a lot of, for example, economic espionage, right? This is a memo sent about an economic summit that they used NSA intelligence at. What we received from NSA gave us deep insight into the plans and intentions of summit participants and ensured that our diplomats were well prepared to advise President Obama and Secretary Clinton on how to deal with contentious issues. So that would give an enormous advantage to people who are negotiating because they know what the other side is already thinking. And of course, U.S. isn't the only one. Canada is one of the Five Eyes. They proudly boasted in their internal documents that they spied on Brazilian mining ministry, for example. And that's not for national security reasons, that's purely for economic espionage. This one kind of blew me away because it seemed like something out of the Cold War, which is if you were to live in Brazil, for example, and you were to buy a Cisco router and they try to ship it to you, the NSA has a program in place where they would intercept the shipment, open up the shipment, put in some sort of a chip or, whatever, carefully pack it back up, and send it on its way. That way, they would have a direct hardware access to all the data that piece of hardware produces, which I was actually blown away by this. There's also diplomatic espionage. Any sort of diplomatic negotiations, you have a complete upper hand in what you want to accomplish if you know exactly what the other people are going to do. I actually really like the quote on this one. Signal intelligence helped me to know when the other permanent representatives were telling the truth, revealed their real positions in sanctions, gave us an upper hand in negotiations, and provided information on various countries' red lines. It kind of reads like a Amazon product review. Do you get that sense? Where it's like, 5 stars, thanks, NSA. Yeah, and actually with those, in the rest of the documents, you can see that a lot of the targets of diplomatic espionage are important, valuable people, financial industry leads, aid organizations, energy companies, EU and UN officials, oil and finance ministers. And actually, one of the more famous ones was when they hacked the phone of Angela Merkel, who's the Chancellor of Germany, and that came out. They weren't too happy about that, but Germany's not one of the Five Eyes, so deal with it. And the NSA itself doesn't really mince words. They know exactly what they're doing, right? They kind of boast about it clearly in their internal memos. It's kind of money, national interests, and ego together. The fact is that the internet, when it was created with the intent to give a lot of influence and power to Western countries and the United States. And so now it's kind of, the threat today to them is kind of everything that might destabilize that system, right? It's the motivation is to kind of keep the empire going. I think I've been going a little too long, but I might speed it up here a little bit. Just quickly about the harms of surveillance. When we know that we're being surveilled, we act differently. We become fearful and compliant. People radically change their behavior when they know they're being watched, and they conform with expectations. What begins as deeply invasive becomes normalized, transformed into usual state of affairs, and no longer noticed. People also think that the act of avoiding surveillance in and of itself would generate suspicion. And people that don't really comply, well, good thing we have all these tools to deny, disrupt, degrade, and deceive. This is straight from the United Kingdom, GCHQ, the Great Britain. Discredit a target, set up traps, or stop them from communicating, or make their computers stop working. I want to quickly just talk about Stanzas' piece, who was here, and it's kind of about sorry, let me pull up my notes here. So it's 48 cameras hooked up to a live database that take pictures of cars and their license plates, and they, in real time, pull up the time of that picture, the car, the registered name, the location. And then there's kind of a robotic voice that's telling you these things. And at the end of it, it kind of finishes it with a little fact or a little story about them, which is totally made up from what I understand. But it kind of gives you the creeps a little bit to know that if all these capabilities are in place, there is something that might be able to do that at some point. And that leads to artificial intelligence. The only limiting factor to a state surveillance like this, they can grab all the data that they want. The only thing that limits them is manpower, right? If there's 250 protesters tomorrow and you want to learn everything about them, you need to find like 250 NSA analysts to look over their entire lives. Or you can create an artificial intelligence, centralized, communicates very fast with everything, puts everything together, and the next thing you know, we're kind of on the realm of sci-fi a little bit, where, did anyone watch Tom Cruise's Minority Report? That movie, kind of pre-crime, that idea of thought crime, you know, if you're at some place and you can't explain it, a machine can put together those pieces of information and think that you're a criminal. So we should start having those conversations when we talk about AI. So let's end it on a positive note, though, because I did come here to in capacity as a privacy advocate. What you can do right now, and these are starting from like the easiest and going to the hardest. Put a tape on your webcam. That's the easiest thing you could do. It actually really works because that's something someone can hack your webcam easily. Pick strong passwords. Use a password manager. I didn't do this for a long time until I started working at Open Media actually, and it saves all your passwords. It's really easy. You just need to remember one password for all your passwords. Use two-factor authentication. So every time you log in, you get a text message or text message to your phone, and then you log in through that. Use encryption. If there's things that you think shouldn't be out there about you, use encrypted email. Pretty good privacy, or PGP, is very good. We use it at work. Signal or other apps for messaging. And Reset the Net and EFF, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, have great resources for that. You can also use a virtual private network, or a VPN, which basically says, my computer is not in this location, it is halfway around the world. It basically masks where you're logging into the internet from. And finally, get active politically. Become a privacy advocate. There's not, that sounds more daunting than it is, but really educate people. Start having these conversations. If you're not okay with any of the things that I said tonight, consider what you can do to make a change. Last year, we had over 300,000 Canadians raise their voice against Bill C-51, which was kind of Canada's version of expanding our surveillance powers greatly. And that became an election issue, and now the government is actually consulting, and they're actually consulting right now. Like yesterday, they had a town hall in Vancouver. So if there's anything that you take out of it, is these two sites, because it tells you exactly what we're doing and what you can do to help. SaveOurSecurity.ca. It gives you, we've basically made a very easy to use, in-depth tool for contributing to the consultations against C-51. It gives you a lot of talking points. You can copy and paste a lot of stuff, and you can send it directly to them using the tool. It just emails it. And Privacy Plan, which is our basic kind of foundations for how privacy should go in Canada. We created this plan with over 100,000 people. I have a hard copy if you want to check it out. But you can find the whole thing at privacyplan.ca. 100,000 Canadians helped us write this, and it's substantial, and you can learn more about it. So I'll conclude with that, and thank you for listening.